We used to talk about saving $20,000 for defense. However, the new source warns stopping at savings is suicide. Let me explain why this statement is critically important to your financial survival. In our previous conversations, we built a fortress. We talked about escaping the car payment trap, and we talked about building an emergency fund so you never have to panic. That was the correct advice for starting out. But if you treat that fortress as your permanent home, you will slowly starve inside of it. Nobody sends you a notification when the rules of the money game change. You keep doing what worked for your parents. You keep doing what worked 10 years ago. You save your money, you avoid debt, you live frugally, you do everything that looks responsible on the surface. But then you wake up a decade later and realize your money does not go as far as it used to. Your goals have moved further away, and the gap between where you are and where you want to be has actually gotten wider. The first dangerous habit that looks responsible but keeps you poor is savings with no end goal. Putting money aside every month is a good habit initially, but if you do that for years and years and you never deploy that money into assets, it becomes a problem. The simplest way to see this is to look at the cold hard numbers. If you saved $10,000 in the year 2015 and left it in cash, earning 0% today, that money has the buying power of about $7,500. Nothing bad happened to you. You did not make a mistake. You did not get scammed. You did not lose it in a bad investment. It is just inflation doing its job. That is a 25% loss in purchasing power for doing exactly what society tells you is responsible. This is why saving feels safe until it suddenly does not. Inflation does not hit you all at once. In the first 2 or 3 years, you barely notice it. Prices are a bit higher, but your savings balance looks the same, so everything feels fine. But somewhere around the 8 to 10 year mark, it becomes impossible to ignore. The number in your account has not changed, but what that number can buy has changed dramatically. Rent feels heavier. Homes feel further away. The same lifestyle suddenly costs more than you expected. The loss is slow and invisible until it compounds enough to matter. The real problem is not saving. The problem is stopping at saving. While your money sits still, assets compound. Prices reprice upward. Entry points for real estate and stocks move further away. Saving feels like progress because the number goes up. But wealth is not about the number on the screen. It is about what that number can turn into later. If you are just hoarding cash beyond your emergency fund, you are essentially standing still on a treadmill that is moving backwards. Now, let us address the second habit, which is avoiding all debt. Most people see debt as being dangerous and stressful and something to escape from as quickly as possible, and for the most part, they are right. For the vast majority of the population, debt is what keeps them below the middle class forever. We have discussed this extensively with the car trap. Your house is bought with debt. Your car is bought with debt. Your phone is probably bought with debt too. All of these monthly payments keep you in check and drain your monthly cash flow. This is bad debt. This is consumer debt. But at the same time, you have to look at how the winners play the game. Businesses scale with debt. Real estate is bought with debt. Governments function entirely on debt. Even banks operate on debt. The whole economic system is built on borrowed money. So when you avoid it completely out of fear, you opt out of leverage, which is the very tool the system is designed around. While you are saving and waiting, people who understand leverage are buying assets earlier. They are locking in cheaper prices. They are accessing lower interest rates. They are letting inflation work for them, not against them. When inflation goes up, the value of their debt goes down in real terms, while the value of their assets goes up. This creates a widening gap between the savers and the owners. Avoiding debt entirely does not protect you from risk. It just guarantees you will pay more later in cash. The real rule is not never use debt. The rule is never use debt that does not produce more than it costs. Because in a system built on leverage, choosing zero debt is not a neutral decision. It is a decision to play the game without one of the main tools available to you. This connects directly to the endgame strategy we discussed called buy, borrow, die. The wealthy do not fear debt, they use it to access liquidity without selling their assets and triggering taxes. By refusing to learn how debt works, you are blocking yourself from ever reaching that level of financial sophistication. You are choosing to play the game on hard mode, while the wealthy are playing with cheat codes. The third habit is playing defensive all the time. Ask yourself a serious question. Do you think winning is just about avoiding making mistakes? Or could there be something more to it? We are wired biologically to protect ourselves from uncomfortable situations. So, we are inherently more prone to avoid doing things that could potentially be a mistake. The problem is, if you think too much about it, everything starts looking like a potential mistake. Moving to another city might be a mistake. Changing careers might be a mistake. Spending most of your free time working on a side project could lead to nowhere. Asking that person out might be an embarrassment. But you have to risk a few bad meals to find the really good ones. Playing defensive does not hurt you immediately. That is why this habit is so common. You do not know what you are missing out on if you never do anything a bit risky. Defense protects what you already have, but offense creates what you do not have. Costs scale whether you want them to or not. Housing rises, healthcare rises, education rises, time gets more expensive. If your strategy is only to defend, eventually reality outruns you. That is when people say, "I do not understand, I have been careful my whole life." They are telling the truth, but being careful does not compound. Budgets do not build wealth. They buy time. Time to learn, time to position, and time to deploy capital. But if defense becomes the end goal instead of the bridge you stall permanently, this defensive mindset manifests in a very specific and toxic habit, which is chasing discounts instead of increasing your buying power. Not spending full price on something feels good, right? Why would you not want that? The problem is this habit becomes toxic when it turns into your main strategy for everything. You do not get rich by being the best coupon hunter. You get rich by raising what an hour of your time is worth. Which do you think is easier? Saving an extra $10,000 in a year, or making an extra $10,000 in a year. Once you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, it becomes obvious you can only cut so much until there is nothing left but the bare minimum. If you spend 45 minutes researching the cheapest option, 30 minutes driving to a cheaper store, and another 20 minutes comparing deals, you can easily waste 2 hours to save $15. That is not being smart. That is being trapped in low leverage thinking. What you are really doing is trading the most valuable asset you have, which is your time, for the smallest possible return. That 2 hours could have been spent learning a new skill, building a business, or networking. We talked about the tactical engine and the need to increase income aggressively. You cannot run a tactical engine if your brain is consumed with saving pennies on toilet paper. You have to switch from a defensive mindset of conservation to an offensive mindset of production. Habit number 4 is waiting for certainty. Waiting feels responsible. You do not rush. You do not guess. You want clarity before you move. On the surface, that sounds like wisdom. But in systems that compound, waiting for certainty is one of the most expensive habits you can have. The system does not reward people for being right eventually. It rewards people for being early enough. Every major advantage is priced for uncertainty. By the time something feels safe, the upside is already gone. You see this everywhere. In housing, in stock markets, in careers, and in credit access. When the path is unclear, prices are low and access is open. When the path is obvious, prices are high and entry is restricted. That is the certainty trap. People do not miss opportunities because they are wrong. They miss them because they waited for permission to feel confident. Just like inflation or debt, this penalty compounds quietly. At first, you are only a little late. Then you are priced out. Then you are locked out. This is when people say, "I would have done it, but now it is too expensive." They are not unlucky. They are just late. The uncomfortable truth is this: certainty is what things look like after the advantage has already been extracted. If you wait until you are 100% sure, you will be 100% late. This leads us to habit number 5, which is taking advice from people who are not playing the same game you are. People who care about you want you to be safe. Of course they do. But advice is always shaped by the game the advisor is playing. Someone who optimized for security will warn you about risk. Someone who never owned assets will warn you about leverage. Someone who avoids uncertainty will warn you about moving early. Here's the simplest example. Tell the average person you want to start a business. They will say, "That is risky." What about your job? At least you have stability. Is that business advice or employee advice? Most people around you only understand risks that they themselves have experienced. If they experience job loss, bills, debt, stress, or recession fear, then their brain is wired to protect you from that. If they never experienced leverage, compounding business equity, or asset-based liquidity, they do not even see those outcomes as real options. When someone cannot imagine a path, they assume that it does not exist. We discussed the isolation strategy previously. This is why it is so critical. You have to stop listening to people who are playing a defensive game if you want to play an offensive game. Their advice is valid for their goals, but poison for yours. Habit number 6 is treating income as the end goal. It has been said that a monthly paycheck is one of the 3 most harmful addictions. The reason a paycheck feels like an addiction is because it feels good immediately and reduces short-term pain, but it creates dependency. You know it will arrive, you know it will remove some stress, and it encourages you to keep chasing it. Receiving money on a monthly basis is not inherently bad, but it does affect how you make decisions. A paycheck feels like freedom until it becomes the thing you cannot afford to lose. That is when you start making decisions based on fear. Will this risk my paycheck? Is this safe? What if I lose stability? But income has a ceiling. And more importantly, it is linear. Wages rise slowly, if at all. You are not 10 timesing your income anytime soon on a paycheck, if ever. You are probably earning way more than your parents did, but are you living any better than your parents? Technology aside, that is probably not the case. This is because the system does not reward people for how much they earn, but for how much they own. Assets compound. Income resets every month to 0. This leads to the bonus habit, which is perhaps the most dangerous of all. Upgrading your lifestyle every time income increases. This is dangerous because it feels like success. You get a raise, you upgrade your apartment, you upgrade your car, you upgrade your spending. Nothing about it feels irresponsible because you are not overspending. You are just living a better life. But here's the trap. Every time you upgrade your lifestyle, you raise the minimum amount of money you need to feel okay. You see, what you are really doing is not increasing your spending, but increasing the required income to survive. We adapt really fast both to good and bad things. The first month in a nicer place feels amazing. A few months later, it feels pretty normal. And now that normal has a higher monthly cost. Now you need your job not to build wealth, but to hold your baseline. That is the point where a salary becomes a trap. You cannot easily quit. You cannot easily experiment. You cannot take a lower paying opportunity with a higher upside. You cannot survive a bad month without stress. So, what is the solution? How do you escape these traps of fake responsibility? We need to integrate everything we have learned. We move from the defensive posture of the $20,000 fund to the offensive posture of the tactical engine, and finally to the architecture of wealth. The source gives us a specific protocol to break the cycle of lifestyle creep. Every time your income increases, keep your lifestyle the same for 12 months. That 1 year of no upgrading creates a financial shock to your system in a good way. If you get a raise or your business takes off, do not move. Do not buy the car. Do not eat better food. Freeze your lifestyle at the old level for 1 full year. This is when the emergency fund becomes real and fills up instantly. This is when assets start stacking up. This is when optionality finally appears. That gap between your new income and your old expenses is where freedom is manufactured. If you close that gap immediately by upgrading your lifestyle, you have gained nothing but nicer furniture and more stress. But if you hold that gap open, you create a surplus that can be deployed into assets. The real goal is not feeling rich. It is being hard to kill financially. Being hard to kill means you have cash reserves. It means you have assets that grow while you sleep. It means you have skills that the market values. It means you are not dependent on a single paycheck or a single employer. To achieve this, you have to stop playing defense. You have to stop listening to people who are scared. You have to stop waiting for certainty. You have to embrace the risks of leverage and the discomfort of uncertainty. You have to understand that saving $20,000 is just the price of admission to the real game. It is the shield you carry, not the house you live in. Once you have the shield, you must pick up the sword. You must attack the market with your skills. You must acquire assets. You must use debt wisely. Do not let the appearance of responsibility keep you poor. True responsibility is not just paying your bills on time. True responsibility is building a financial reality where your freedom is guaranteed by assets, not by a boss. That is the only way to win the game. Stop saving for a rainy day and start building an ark. The rain is coming, whether you are ready or not. Be ready.